All right, folks. So today we're going to talk about literary foils. I think this is probably a term that you have heard before, but if it hasn't, it's not a big deal. I'm going to review a little bit of what they do, why they matter, and they're really, really connected to this idea of a complex, sort of deeply human, deeply nuanced character that we've been talking about. So that's really where I'm going to bring this presentation as we move forward. So the first thing that you need to do is that in your journal, which you guys all have a composition notebook, put the date at the top. Today is September the 28th. And I want you to think about somebody in your life, a real person that you actually know. You do not have to name them, or you can give them a pseudonym, but somebody that you consider to be just so different from you that they're sort of your opposite. And I want you to think about somebody real, somebody you know, not like some, famous person that you've never met, but somebody that you know. It doesn't have to be somebody that you don't like. When I say the opposite, I don't mean like you're good and they're evil, just somebody who is wildly different from you. And I want you to think about what qualities do they have, or how do their qualities bring out certain elements of your personality, and how do they do that? So just describe this person, the way that their contrast with you kind of highlights certain parts of your character. Take at least a half a page. Go ahead and pause this video for about 10 minutes, write at least half a page, and then come on back. Okay, so I hope you've had time in your journals to reflect a little bit on this person who is kind of the opposite to you. And this, I think, is a really nice lead in to the idea of a literary foil. Because what a literary foil is a character who contrasts with some key character in a text. And the reason that they're called foils is because foil makes things shine more brightly. So if you think about a sheet of tin foil, right, it does all kinds of things, but part of its purpose is to make something shine brighter, to create, some kind of heat effect or protective effect or whatever. And people, of course, use them for all wide variety of purposes in terms of reflecting light. Well, that's what a literary foil does. It reflects a character's traits back to them. And so normally there's a contrast. This character is very different from that character. And because of that difference, because of that contrast, it makes usually the protagonist character shine more brightly. So we only see X, Y, and Z elements of this person's character. We only see these complicated, nuanced, strange parts of this person's character because of the foil, right? So maybe we know that they're a hero, we know that they're kind, we know that they're generous, but because of this contrast, we also see deeper, more complicated nuances to their character. Often, this will highlight some kind of thematic messaging. So often these foils will function to help send some kind of message, because that is what characters do. Characters carry the weight of meaning and of theme so often in a text. So just for some examples, I think probably the most fun one is Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy. Okay, so Harry and Draco are foils. This is sort of your classic protagonist-antagonist foil relationship. It is not always a protagonist-antagonist relationship. But Harry brings out all of Draco's coldness, all of his sadism, all the horrible things Draco does just to hurt people. Also his envy and also his fear. So we bring out sort of those, if you want to call them evil qualities, his traditional antagonistic qualities, but also these sort of human envy, fear. Sometimes we can relate to that. Oh, I too have felt smaller than someone. And at the end of the series, Harry also brings out some of Draco's love and protection and humanity for others. On the flip side, it is Draco's cruelty, Draco's sadism, Draco's schadenfreude. Do you know what schadenfreude is? It's sort of joy in watching other people suffer is schadenfreude. It is those things that bring out the most vulnerable pieces of Harry's protective instincts for others and Harry's sense of justice. So we know Harry's brave. We know he's heroic. We know that he's so many things. But that sense of justice, that sense of here's the right way for the world to work. Here is good and here is fundamentally true goodness. Well, that comes out via Draco's actions in the text. Okay? In a similar way, last year you read The Great Gatsby, I think. Tom Buchanan and Jay Gatsby are foils, okay? So this isn't necessarily your traditional protagonist-antagonist relationship. I'm not sure The Great Gatsby really has a protagonist, but we see Jay, who is our main character, right? Tom, who is this sort of straight-laced, old money, kind of cold, standard rich man, and Jay, who is this new money, wild, dream following, sort of nutty guy. So we see that industrious energy, that passion, often as that sort of foiled reflection off of Tom Buchanan. Here's what Tom is, and therefore what Jay is not. Okay? Tom also shows us that obsessive love, okay? In the flip side, when we see Jay, we see the absence of those things in Tom. So his coldness, his entitlement. And so we, that I say joyful abandon here, we see very much Tom's refusal to embrace that sort of abandon, that carefree sort of wildness that we see in Jay. If you guys watch Schitt's Creek, one of my favorite shows, Alexis and Stevie, here I picked these because this is a protagonist foil relationship, okay? These guys are not, one is good, one is bad, but they're definitely foils, okay? Alexis is this wealthy, entitled, beautiful, confident, strong woman. And Stevie is this like very earthy, sort of often diffident or unconfident, and sometimes kind of cold, sarcastic version of herself. So what's very cool with these two characters together, and we see them often via David, right? He's our middleman in the show between these two women, Alexis, his sister, and Stevie, his best friend. So what we see here is Stevie bringing out often and reflecting back to Alexis that sort of wealthiness, all those things with her appearance, how very beautiful she is, and also her warmth and her vulnerability. So Stevie's sort of sarcastic, almost sardonic sense of humor, and also Stevie's refusal to be very vulnerable, her real guarded energy also reflects back to us a lot of Alexis's vulnerability. And then on the flip side, right, Alexis is so straightforward that she really shows us and reflects back to us that sort of humor, the really dark sarcasm that Stevie leans into. That's so the opposite of Alexis's very just open, almost problematic honesty in that sort of refusal to be self-aware. Also, Stevie's generosity comes out via Alexis, and her fears, those wild, those big, strong walls that Stevie has up in her life. And then, of course, as Alexis and Stevie both pursue romantic relationships, we see the successes of one are the failures of the other, right? Alexis struggles to be in a relationship that is honest and vulnerable and not about material things and not about physical appearance. Stevie struggles to find a relationship and to allow herself to open up to be in relationships. But when she does, she is honest with herself and she is an advocate for herself and she cares about her own needs. Very much the opposite. Alexis dates all different kinds of people, this and that way. She always has a boyfriend, but those relationships are often very problematic. Stevie rarely has relationships, but when she does, she's a nice advocate for herself and her needs. So when we bring foils back to complex characters, we have to remember that foils only exist with characters who are complex. You can't have a foil to a character that is simple, because the whole point of a foil is that it brings out these nuanced, deeper, more complicated elements of a character. And then when we have those foils, those elements are revealed. They may not have been revealed without that character. We might not see that version of Alexis without Stevie. We might not see that. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but we as readers might not see it. Often, the most complex characters need foils to reveal their truest selves. That's very important there. And then, of course, authors give us both the complex characters and their foils. And, of course, the foils themselves are complex as well to work towards these larger thematic messages. And that's sort of what we're going to be digging into as we think about characters and characterization and complex characters over the next, over the course of this whole school year. So that's really it. Hopefully you enjoyed and learned something and got something out of this presentation, and then go ahead from here into the next Schoology activity. Enjoy, guys!